Hey you. Yes, you. Thanks for tuning in to the Healthy, Wild, and Free podcast. My name is David Benjamin. I'm your host and the founder of HealthyWildAndFree.com. If you're like me, you understand that health, the mind, body, spirit, heart connection, and living a green, eco-friendly, sustainable lifestyle are some of the most valuable and life-enhancing lessons that we can learn and pass on to our children to live happy and abundant lives. That's why this podcast was created, to help you grow in these areas. If you aren't already subscribed to the newsletter, go to HealthyWildAndFree.com, click the box at the top right-hand corner to get a free copy of our latest ebook, and you will be subscribed to be notified about future podcasts. Thanks for subscribing and tuning in. Enjoy. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is David Benjamin, your host of the Healthy, Wild, and Free podcast. Today I have a guest who's going to be talking about energy tapping, which is a form of I'll let him explain that, but it's kind of a new form of therapy that has really kind of been around for thousands of years, but has kind of recently been resurrected in kind of the West in kind of a new light. So today the guest on the show is Fred Gallo. He's a clinical psychologist, a therapist, consultant, researcher, author, and international trainer. He has published 8 books, numerous journal articles, book chapters, and training manuals. Some of his books are Energy Psychology, Energy Tapping for Trauma, The Neurophysics of Human Behavior, amongst others. Since 1980, he has been training professionals on various clinical issues and therapeutic approaches. He has presented throughout the United States, Canada, Europe, and parts of the Pacific Rim and Africa. He received his BA from, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, Duquesne University, his MA from the University of Dayton, and his PhD from the University of Pittsburgh. He has been on the faculty of Penn State University and has also worked in the fields of corrections, mental retardation, child welfare, chemical dependency, and hospital psychology. In addition to consulting to several mental health agencies, he maintains a private practice. Dr. Gallo is a member of the American Psychological Association, the Pennsylvania Psychological Association, and the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. He is a diplomat of the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. And I'm going to bring quite a biography. I'm going to bring him on the call right now. Fred, are you there?
Yes. Hi, David. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm fine.
Thanks for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
So I wanted to start the interview like I start all of my interviews and ask you the question, what kind of sparked your interest into the kind of holistic health, holistic alternative therapy space? Well,
actually I've been interested in different approaches to helping people for a long time, probably, since I began, college. I was interested in philosophy at that time and also psychology and started off as really studying philosophy and then went into psychology. I've explored different alternative approaches to psychotherapy. There's standard approaches which are approaches like psychoanalysis and cognitive therapy and so on, and I've practiced many of those over the years. But somewhere back in, I'm revealing my age here, probably in the late 70s, I became interested in something called neurolinguistic programming, and I studied that with the founders, Richard Bandler and John Grinder and their associates. And I found it to be a very different approach to treating people that would often work quite rapidly compared to other approaches. Some approaches you just work with, hoping that people will get better as you relate to them and reflect back things about what's going on with them, whatever they have to tell you. But this approach took a very active approach, a very directive approach, where I would take people through certain techniques that helped. But they even, they took time, but certainly not as much time as the traditional approaches. And then, this back in 1992, I was getting kind of bored with the things I was doing with people. I had a private practice, and and I was consulting to hospitals and so on, and had taught in the university. And I came across the work of Dr. Roger Callahan, who just passed this past month, and he was, I believe, 85 at the time, whenever he died here just recently. But Dr. Callahan was doing a very odd approach to therapy, and where he would have people bring to mind different problems, whether it be a phobia, a specific phobia, or a trauma, or feelings of depression, anxiety, and he would have them tap, addiction problems too, by the way, and he would have them tap with their fingers at different locations on their body, and it would resolve the problem fairly quickly. I mean, sometimes within a matter of a few minutes, which was unheard of in the field. And I was sort of dumbfounded by it. And so anyway, I got in touch with him, and he and I had developed a nice relationship. I spent time with him. He was out in Indian Wells, California at the time, and I'm in north of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I would fly out there at times and spend time with him, and I learned his approach, and became very involved with it. I started to explore not only what he was doing, but some of the sources where his work came from, and I discovered that it had roots in acupuncture and acupressure, because the places that we were tapping were acupuncture meridian points, and which also correlate with nerves and so on. So there's certainly a lot of debate in the field as to why the approach works, whether it's stimulating nerves or meridians. I think it does them both. So I studied other people. Like there's some of his sources were a couple chiropractors, George Goodhart, who had developed a field called applied kinesiology. So I got very involved with that, with him, got to know him well, and John Thie, who developed something called Touch for Health, and I would communicate with John Thie before. And both of those giants have passed also recently. And a psychiatrist who's originally from Australia, John Diamond, so I spent time with him too. And over the course of time of working with this approach, I started to develop my own approach, which actually different approaches. Have a very long, involved name for this one approach. I call it Energy Diagnostic and Treatment Methods, which I've shortened to, I call it Advanced Energy Psychology. And I developed something called the Identity Method and something called Energy Consciousness Therapy, which are all kind of integrated, but they're segments of my entire approach. So that's what I was doing. What I found when working with Callahan is that I had a lot of issues of my own. I had traumas in my past. My mother died when I was 12 years old, and I still had some lingering trauma concerning that. And I found that by tuning in different memories that were still distressing to me, if I tapped, by tapping, I found that the distress was no longer there. Well, maybe some of the memories were still sad, which is understandable. I mean, I don't know that I would want to not feel that, but the extreme distress was relieved very easily. I also had different social anxieties at times, and I found that by tapping those on those stresses, it relieved that. So I don't have any trouble talking in front of large groups of people. I've talked to the largest group I ever talked to was 1,300 people, but there's no anxiety about it. And there was a time when that would have been impossible for me. And then I started doing this with myself, and then I helped family members and friends, and then finally I started using this approach with clients that came to see me. And am I going on too long?
No, I mean it's good to understand this. I do have a few questions for you, though. For
yeah.
the listener.
Why don't I stop rather than going into client examples and just
all right.
hear your questions first, and
I'd love to hear those later on. Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
As far as energy tapping is concerned, can you kind of paint a picture of first of all, kind of how it kind of stemmed from acupuncture? And I really like the story in your book about the Chinese warriors and how they kind of stumbled upon acupuncture, and then how that kind of turned into tapping these meridian points. So can you kind of give the listeners a visual understanding of what occurs physiologically or within the physiology of energy tapping?
Well, okay. See, there's these what are called meridians, and there's 12 primary meridians. They go by different by names of different organs in the body, even though they're not limited to the organ. One example is something called the stomach meridian, and there's 45 points or acupoints on that meridian. The first point is directly under the eyes, on both sides, on the bony orbits under the eyes. There's something called the gallbladder meridian. The first point is right at the corner of the eye, near the temple, but just right at the bony orbit there too, on both the left and the right sides of the eyes. And there's something called the bladder meridian, which is one of the first points. Well, actually, it's the second point. Is at the beginning of the eyebrow, at the bridge of the nose, and if you go directly under the eyebrow, close to the eye, is the first point. Anyway, the bladder meridian has 67 points. It's the longest one, and there's a variety of ones. There's the heart meridian that has 9 points, and its first point is in the armpit area, and the last point is on the side of the little finger, the tip of the little finger, on the side that faces the ring finger. Anyway, so there's these 12 primary meridians, and then there's these what are called collector meridians. Two of the most noted collector meridians are called the governing vessel and the central vessel. And last points on those meridians are under the nose and under the bottom lip. Anyway, okay, so that just gives you a little background on this. How people came up with it goes back thousands of years, probably as much as 5,000 years. Originally, we thought it was limited to China, but there's evidence that of that kind of information, that kind of knowledge, being in different areas of the world, being in different areas of Europe, and so on, too. So we don't really know how it all began, but if we just trace from China, probably we really should go back to maybe India. The idea developed in India that there was an energy system in the body, that we weren't just physical beings, but we were also energetic beings. And that really dovetails well with physics, because physics pretty much holds. If you look at Einstein's theories or quantum theory, everything comes down to fundamentally being energy. Even if we could magnify ourselves, this great magnifying glass, we would see that there's a lot of space in our bodies, and there's just these pulsating energy, and we look solid,